Aloha. It's now time again to look at the draft diocesan budget as we prepare for October's annual meeting of the Diocesan Convention. So posted on the diocesan website under the Convention tab, you'll find the first draft budget. It's actually entitled 4.2, but it's the first one we're sharing with the diocese. Now this past Saturday, Diocesan Council and Standing Committee looked at this budget. This is your opportunity to look at it. Remember, it's a draft. It's not even the official draft. Diocesan Council will meet again on August 17th and prepare the official draft budget, the one that will be presented to Diocesan Convention. This is your opportunity to look at the numbers, look at the narrative, ask questions. In fact, if you want to ask questions, you can write to me directly at WriteRev Hawaii, one word, RTREVHAWAII, WriteRev Hawaii @gmail.com. That way you can ask me specifically, and if you go on the website, you can look at the numbers and the narrative. So I need you to look at this before next month. Let's look at the budget together. We'll just walk through it simply, and I'll make some comments, and then if you'll jot down your questions and send them to me, I will answer them, or if I can't answer them, I'll take them to Peter or to Sandy or to Ray. If they can't answer them, we'll take them to Diocesan Council. We'll let Council mull over it. Remember, Council presents the budget, but the budget is acted upon by the delegates at the annual meeting of Convention. So if you're a delegate, that includes all of the canonically resident clergy and those elected by their congregations. You need to understand this budget. This is your budget. So let's look at the numbers. Start on page 3. Now we're looking at the numbers, and on page 3 you'll see that at the top it says total income. First, item 1A, assessments. Remember that most of the income of the diocese comes from God's people through their congregations. Every year, Diocesan Convention, through the budget, sets the assessment rate on the operating income of the congregations. Now, it's actually, the actual numbers come from the operating income 2 years ago, because you have to wait till the parochial reports have been filed and everything's clear. So whatever your operating income was 2 years ago in your congregation, that's the basis of how much you pay. Now, it's been 18% the last 2 years, and it's likely going to remain that. Some of you who have been around the diocese remember well when the assessment was up to 26%. So we're holding steady at 18%. And actually, if you look at the numbers, our income has continued to go up even as our assessment rate has gone down. And that's because of the generosity of God's people. So the assessment assumes an 18% assessment rate. Now, if you look down under investment income, this is largely the money that's either invested in the diocesan pooled income fund that we have, or it comes from other outside funds or bequests that are held in trust by banks. And you can kind of see the difference in the way they're listed. Some of the funds are restricted so that within the budget, the income is only used for that purpose, and some of the funds are unrestricted, and therefore it's part of the general fund. Under that is rentals. Now here's an interesting thing. You'll notice it says apartments, and there's nothing listed in 2021 and 2022. My long hope, is that the Clute Apartments could be torn down. You'll know the Clute Apartments. If you drive into Queen Emma Square, there are those 2-story old buildings just as you drive into the square. They've been providing income in one way or another for the diocese for many years. But we've reached this point where the amount we can get in rental income and the amount it costs to maintain the facilities has evened, and some years they cost more than we're bringing in. They're also an eyesore. The schools would love to have a more sightly entrance into St. Andrew's School. And I think St. Peter's would like to be more open to downtown. So my hope is that sometime in 2020 they can be torn down. But we've got to work with the school, and we've got to work with St. Peter's to try to figure out the next steps. Do we just put in a parking lot, recoup our income that way? Is the parking lot going to include part of St. Peter's parking lot as a single space? Might the schools want to bring down Centennial? They've talked about it. Does that mean a parking garage? We're still unsure. But at least for the short term, I hope that we can tear down the Cluett apartments so that income's not there in subsequent years. You'll also note then the other rentals parking. Now, you may not know this, but behind the memorial building here on the square, all of the parking that appears to belong to the schools is actually parking of the Episcopal Church in Hawaii, and the school leases it from the church. So that is the parking income. There are also 3 or 4 other individual parking spots rented to private citizens, but most of the parking on that side of the cathedral is income for the diocese coming from the school. So that's where the money comes from. How we spend it. If you turn to page 5, let's just go through mission and ministry. The Native Hawaiian Ministry Committee, you'll see there's $3,000 as a jump up in 2021. Historically, that's largely to attend conferences of indigenous people around the country and around the world. In 2021, that's the international gathering of the Anglican Indigenous Network. This year, 2019, it happens to be taking place here in Hawaii. I've also asked the Native Hawaiian Ministry Committee to help the diocese with the death of the late Malcolm Naea-Chan, help the diocese with translations, expanding our liturgical resources. Frankly, we became dependent upon as a diocese on Malcolm Naea. And now that he's gone, he's a missing link. We're going to have to expand that. I've also asked the committee to help us as a diocese understand issues of Hawaiian sovereignty and other issues facing the Kanaka Mole, the people of this land, our fellow parishioners. Your voice may be needed in that. You'll see that the Pacific Island Ministry Committee and the Pacific Islander Missioner in 2018 and then in 2020, that's been removed. We no longer have a person paid to help with this ministry, and the committee disbanded and wandered away. However, largely at St. Elizabeth's, we have an increased need for a Tongan language ministry. So to help with that, there's actually in the budget this year, next year, and upcoming, $10,000 to help with a language ministry in Tongan, and hopefully it can expand further and continue to grow. Support for organized missions. Now, 3A is a real problem. As organized missions, the diocese pays for the financial review of procedures. You know, how money's collected, where money goes, make sure all the forms are there. We call it an audit, but it's kind of a mini audit. For years, we contracted with an accountant who gave us a great benefit. He helped us out a lot. So the cost was almost $35,000, $40,000. He retired. The new auditors are charging $75,000 plus, and they are not nearly as forgiving as our previous auditor. We're probably going to have to think this one through. Now remember, the audit is required by national church canon of all congregations. Of the bishop of the diocese, it's required of every parish and every mission every year. It's by canon, it's not an option. Now, we have historically helped missions because they're smaller with this and asked parishes to pay for it. We've got to think through how we're going to do this. But it's in the budget now. Next are the congregations. Calvary. You'll see it's an ongoing help with that church in Kaneohe that was recovering from its losses after internal church fights, national church fights, around the full inclusion of God's people. We're going to have to evaluate what that means. It's a great church site. It's in a good location. But how do we help that church rebound? Grace Molokai is the church on Molokai. We, as a diocese, have historically said it's an essential mission site in an area with very, very high unemployment, without access to immediate access to another island. The current vicar actually has also served as a hospice nurse. The funding there is consistent. We are also going to have to ask how we can best help Grace in the future. Is it just money? What will it mean? How can we shape a sustainable ministry? Now, falling completely off of the budget, beginning in 2019 and continuing, St. Columba's is now completely part of St. James Parish. St. Columba's Pauilo is an extension of the parish. So now St. James on the island of Hawaii has 3 sites. One on the beach, one at St. James Waimea, one at St. Columba's Pauilo, but they are one church, one vestry, one rector with assisting clergy. Now 3E, now this is interesting. You'll notice that there are no funds for St. Jude's Ocean View on the island of Hawaii. It's because they've done such a great job. I'm serious. They have effective self-supporting ministry. They were using the subsidy for a little bit additional of more of their outreach ministries. Since this is supposed to be a subsidy and outreach funds are available in other parts of the diocese, I was in touch with them. I asked them, if we drop you from the subsidy side of the diocese, will it make a difference? And their wise Bishop Warden said, we'll do what we need to do. Don't worry about it, Bishop. So the subsidy for St. Jude's, in affirmation of all the good work they've done, has been removed. They can still seek funds in other parts of the budget, but they don't need a subsidy. On the other hand, West Oahu has been a problem. The grand vision of the Episcopal Church on West Oahu, the 4 congregations working together for various reasons, fell apart. The 2 congregations that are left really are functioning as 2 separate congregations. One in Waianae and one in Kapolei. And frankly, St. Nicholas in Kapolei has not been the expansive church plant we had hoped for. So what does that mean? It's in the budget. Think of this as supporting those 2 congregations, but I assure you that in 2020, there's going to be a major reevaluation. As bishop, I think it's essential we have a congregation in Kapolei. It is truly the second city of Oahu now. It continues to grow. The UH campus is vital. And I think it's important for us to have a growing, vital congregation there. but we will have to evaluate the ministry of St. Nicholas and how effective it has been, or can be, or will be. So for both St. Nicholas and St. John the Baptist, we are in a time of transition following the end of Episcopal Church on West Oahu. Discipleship. Camp Mokuleia, as you can see, has had a big jump up beginning in 2019 and continuing. That's largely because that has become the locus of youth ministry for the diocese. By investing in the camp, we are asking the expertise of the camp to help the whole diocese do youth ministry. Christian formation is largely those items that we support as a diocese. We all know Christian formation actually happens at the congregational level, right? There are programs we can support: education for ministry, godly play, certain diocesan-wide Christian education initiatives, but it must be about supporting the congregation. In 4C, you see diversity training. We have been trying for many years to find the right type of canonically required training that is aware of the cultural diversity of Hawaii. Many of the anti-racism trainings and diversity trainings from North America just don't fit our context. Canon Sandy's working on this, and I hope that 2020 will be our opportunity to find our uniquely Hawaiian way of looking at multicultural reality. EYE Travel Fund, you know, every 3 years there is a large gathering of youth from all over the country. This coming 2020, it's going to be at Howard University in Washington, D.C. So rather than gathering the money for our delegation of youth in 1 year, it's the practice of the diocese to set aside a little money every year so we can send our young people to the Episcopal youth event. Planned giving is the ongoing efforts of Peter Pereira around planned giving, encouraging people to leave the church in their wills, using life insurance policies, making plans to help parishioners continue to care for their church even after their death. In other words, to do what our ancestors have already done for us. Safe Church Training, that's the online training required by National Canon for Episcopalians in leadership. St. Andrew's Schools chaplain support directly has to do with the fact that St. Andrew's Schools, for most of us the Priory, is the only diocesan school, meaning it's the only school in which the Diocesan Council elects the Board of Trustees. It's also the school that sits on land that belongs to the Episcopal Church in Hawaii. The bishop is on the board. It was founded by Queen Emma. In other words, we are tightly bonded, and it's right here on Queen Emma Square. So we began to provide funds to help ensure there's a chaplain in place at St. Andrew's Schools. You'll see that the funding in 2019 was $18,800, and it goes up. Well, that's because housing for the chaplain was provided at Cluett Apartments. If the Cluett Apartments go away, then the question for us is, where will the chaplain go? So the funding increases to help offset the loss of that housing. But the chaplain is essential to our common life. It's important to us here. No, I'll tell you, it's important to me as bishop, because I need a chaplain who can connect with this office. I need a chaplain who can connect with me as bishop. I need a chaplain in this school, because of the proximity, who will be the liaison with St. Andrew's Cathedral and with St. Peter's Church. It's a vital link in connecting the institutions. Lastly, you'll see the presiding bishop's visit. He's not coming back again this year. It was a great visit, but we don't have to put it in the budget for 2020. Turn the page, if you would please, page 6. Now here are the bearing ministries: outreach and justice, a cup of cold water. That's the homeless ministry on Maui. But remember, it is a diocesan ministry. Diocesan Council elects the board of a cup of cold water. So the $5,000 in the budget is our symbolic support for that ministry of the whole diocese on that island. Ecumenical and interfaith, these are the fundings of the organizations we support. Pacific Health Ministries, Samaritan Counseling Center. It also is on our ongoing support for the Interfaith Alliance and our representation on the Hawaii Council of Churches. Now I need to tell you that Cecilia Fordham has been the backbone, has been my representative to this most of the time since I've been bishop. It's an important ministry. It keeps me and keeps the diocese connected for a small amount of money and her many volunteer hours. Prison chaplaincy and prison ministry is a relatively new ministry that is our investment in Kaleo Patterson and in the ministry to the prisons, backpack ministries, Bible studies, other activities. Kaleo has been organizing, helping churches become involved in those ministries. It's a relatively small amount for a quarter-time, very part-time ministry. It answers the gospel mandate from Matthew 25, but it's not very much. Ministry development. Lay leader development. First, someone will ask, lay leader development seems to be so much more money than clergy development. Part of that is lay leader development takes place in other parts of the diocese. Whenever we gather together and we ask everyone to come, that's part of lay leader development. So when it's education day before convention, that's continuing formation and education opportunities. A large part of clergy development costs are actually the annual clergy retreat and other clergy-specific activities. Other things happen in which includes lay people and clergy. There are some trainings that are just for clergy, some trainings just for lay leaders, the wardens trainings, the treasurers trainings. But travel gets caught up in this, in supporting the travel so all of our clergy can gather together. Curacy support. You'll notice these are folk who graduated from a 3-year residential seminary program, and we're trying to provide them the opportunity for mentorship as new priests for their first 2 years after ordination. Usually it happens here. Occasionally, if we don't have a placement, it can happen someplace else. You'll see the rise and fall because our last 2 recent seminarians graduated this past May. So by 2022, they won't be in the budget. Commission on Ministry. The Commission on Ministry has to cover all aspects of overseeing the ordination process, but they're also responsible for lay ministry trainings like Eucharistic ministers, providing and overseeing the guidelines for a lay preacher or for a lay Eucharistic minister. They're not called lay anymore. Eucharistic minister, sorry. But you see, they oversee all aspects of our ministry together. This includes psychological examinations. This includes getting those folk in ordination process together regularly. In 6E, part of what they would oversee is helping to support seminarians in residential seminary. But as I mentioned, we don't have anyone else in a residential seminary. They're not gone off to the mainland for theological college. So there's no budget for that in the upcoming years. On the other hand, Waiolae Hui'ia is our local formation program. The cost, you'll see the drop in 2020, 2021, 2022. It's not we're spending less money. There are fewer students. We have 1 in the program now, and 3 will be beginning in September in the first year of the program, the preliminary year. So there'll be 4 come September. But the reason the number goes down is there's been a generous benefactor who has set aside money for the program that allows us to decrease the amount in the budget for the next few years. And the Waiolae Hui Dean is the part-time, in our case, priest, Diana Akiyama. Part-time, she provides the academic oversight for the program, both those in the pre-program and those in Waiolae Hui'ia. Finally, under Other. Now, here you can see there are diocesan grants and there are bishop emergency grants. The diocesan grants are the grants that any congregation or other ministry can apply for new ministry initiatives, whether it be a new type of worship or a new outreach program or a new education program. There's an opportunity for a grant here to just help the congregations along a little bit to get something new started. Now, the bishop emergency grants aren't so romantic. They're the crisis funds. They're the broken bathroom not covered by insurance. They're the larger events that need an influx of money quickly to help with a big problem. Now, I will note for you that the numbers in that seem very erratic. That's driven by the fact that that's often where council balances the budget. And it's also where council, trying to look ahead, if there's something major coming up, will make a decision to increase it for a particular reason, knowing that there may be a crisis or knowing that there's something coming up in the next year. But on the whole, you'll see somewhat less than $20,000, and the specific number just gets us to the balanced budget. Diocesan organization. So now we're looking on page 7. Now, I know sometimes we think that there is this big office someplace. The Diocesan Support Center is not very big. Those of us in the office on the second floor of the memorial building at the Cathedral of St. Andrew in Honolulu. Danny Casey's the bookkeeper, but he's taking on more duties, so we're going to ask that he become the accountant in 2020. Ray Costa, the business manager. Denise Esposito, the executive assistant to the bishop. Sandy Graham, the canon for congregational life and leadership. Peter Pereira, the treasurer, and the plan giving officer. That's the full-time staff helping me here in the office. So what you will see is how their compensation lays out. Remember, the numbers we're looking at here are our entire compensation package. It's salary, benefits, pension, it's everything. As you look through that, I will highlight again what I mentioned earlier, the accountant's role, formerly the bookkeeper. Danny's taken on many more responsibilities that warranted the increase in his compensation in 2020. Also, as you go down, you'll see other diocesan expenses. Some of them make a lot of sense. Archives. That's what we knew. Stuart Ching needs to the files and the special paper and the things he needs to keep our historic documents together. Some things we don't do anymore. We don't advertise in the yellow pages, so there is no advertising. The Chancellor's expense. That we've got to send our Chancellor to an annual Chancellor's Conference. Remember, our Chancellor is a volunteer. So the time he spends working on canons and as the legal advisor to the diocese is his gift to us. We send him to Chancellor's Conferences so we can find out what's going on in other dioceses and what we need to be concerned about. Now, you will see, as I mentioned earlier, the Contract Communications Coordinator, that's Sybil. The rise in the money set aside for that contract rises in 2020, but it's because it covers what Sybil actually does. In her generosity, she would often not charge us for all of the hours she put into her work. That's a wonderful gift, but as an office, we have to plan what happens if Sybil isn't there anymore. Diocesan convention, other kinds of insurances and legal costs, taxes, it's pretty clear. Now you will note in 10R, Province 8 quota, and in 10W, the Episcopal Church quota, this is the equivalent of our assessment payments to the church, to the province, which are the Diocese of the Pacific, and to the National Episcopal Church. So your assessment dollars as congregations and our other income is likewise assessed, and that becomes the basis of these quotas that are part of our contribution to being in the larger Episcopal Church. Turn the page. We're looking now at page 8. The memorial building, this is where the office of the bishop is at. The Alt Memorial Building is the building that the office of the Diocesan Support Center is on the second floor. We set money aside every year on the assumption that one day it's already happened, we'll need capital improvements. Some of the things that aren't covered by the cathedral will one day need to participate in fixing the roof. We have already had to buy new air conditioning. So this is to build a capital reserve fund for the maintenance of the memorial building. Cleaning is pretty clear, shared security expenses. The shared cathedral expenses, now those are different. That's different. That's what we pay as a diocese, as the Episcopal Church in Hawaii, in support of the cathedral, for them to clean the sidewalks, to maintain the property around us, to do those things not covered by capital improvement. Remember, it's not rent, it's shared expenses. We're one ohana. But it's to try to cover the cost of electricity, what water's used here in the Diocesan Support Center, and when we as a diocese have a service at the cathedral or a meeting in the Von Holt Room. Travel, the governance group, standing committee, diocesan council, committees, commissions, other groups, when we need to come together. Now, we've been working very hard at having more and more Zoom meetings and other meetings, but we still have to come together. But remember, travel exists throughout this budget for events and activities. We do not have the luxury that many dioceses have, where people can drive, you know that, or the whole diocese can drive to make a meeting, to come to diocesan convention. Travel is throughout the budget, but this is specifically for diocesan council, commission on ministry, standing committee, governance meetings, and staff travel to get us around, to get us, especially Sandy, Peter, and myself, to get us to you. Finally, the Kapolei land. I mentioned earlier St. Nicholas. We are the only mainline denomination that owns property in Kapolei. But we don't have a building there. and therefore we have to pay property tax on it. If we're going to have a viable presence, we have to address this property right across the street from Kapolei Elementary School. And the Medigap program. Lastly, that is the long-standing program of the diocese for clergy and lay employees of the office of the Episcopal Church in Hawaii who have served the church for 20 years in total at any time during their ministry, or for the last 10 years of their ministry. It provides an additional supplemental Medicare benefit that the diocese has decided years ago to provide for long-term clergy and employees of the Episcopal Church in Hawaii. That is here in the office, full-time, who've participated in the pension fund. This provides them one more bridge and supplement to their Medicare service. Now let me say, I think we as a diocese have to think whether this should continue, but also what it means for our clergy who do not participate in the in the church pension fund, or are part salary or non-stipendiary. That's part of an ongoing conversation about the emerging reality of our church. I hope that helped. We just walked through the budget. Now, I want to leave you with remind you that we've also done work as a diocese around strategic initiatives. We have said that as a diocese, we are committed to developing and sustaining spiritual growth, vitality, curiosity, and well-being within our churches. We have said that we will seek to strengthen our identity as one Ohana and the relationships within the Ohana as the diocese among clergy, lay leaders, and congregations. And the diocese focused on improving the capacity for communication within congregations across the diocese and in our communities as we engage in evangelism. The budget was actually considered with those things in mind. We have design teams working on specific things. We have overall ministry projects that fit into these. But I need your ideas and your commitment. How can you help the diocese grow? Look on the budget as our Ohana budget. What does it say about us? Do you have ideas about how things should be different or how new ministry should be begun? Look at the budget as possibilities. Now, all of that, but still, I want you to let me know some things before August 17th. So again, if you have questions or ideas about this budget, send them to me at rightrevhawaii@gmail.com. RTREVHAWAII, one word, @gmail.com. So let me know what you think. I look forward to hearing from you. Oh, my friends, be sure you're in my prayers every day. And thank you for your leadership in this diocese. Aloha.